Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have a creator of a documentary. His documentary is called I Was an Elder. Welcome, Jordan Currier, to our show.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
I think some of our audience is familiar with the Jeff Pingree film that's available and it's been on Amazon Prime for a while, and so it seems very similar to that. And I do think there is something, as someone who's also served a mission, there can be a lot of really complicated feelings about it, especially when you deconstruct. There are very few people that I still keep in contact with. And I honestly don't know what I would do or who I would meet or what I would say going back. So it's interesting to me that there's been, another that you've created a documentary with, I think maybe with a similar, not intention, but I guess like behind it, just the similar feelings of maybe trying to kind of work out what it was that you did back then, now that you're on this side of things. I guess, is that what prompted this? I guess we could start there.
Yeah, that's for one thing. I haven't seen Jeff Pingree's film, so that's something I need to put on my watch list. So for me, the motivation was I also didn't know about this term deconstruction. I've gotten these amazing comments, YouTube comments from people who have used that word, deconstruction, and it's such a perfect word. I had absolutely no idea that that's the phrase that you use to describe this sort of decoupling from the Mormon Church. So I think the germ of this project began with a desire to basically confront my past, and it started with excavating my mission journals, which had been in a box in a closet for years. I served from 2004 to 2006, and I hadn't read my mission journals at all in that time from 2006 to now. And so it started with a desire to kind of reassess that period of my life. I'd sort of basically suppressed it, compartmentalized it, and the mission journals were shocking. They were a revelation. They were sad. I felt a lot of anger at myself, at the church. I felt sadness for myself, for some of the people that I met on my mission. People that I wrote about, the gay people that I encountered on my mission, because I was in the throes of being closeted. What's the term? Cognitive dissonance. I was sort of a walking case study. I was such a firm believer in my mission that I really did believe that I had overcome being gay. And so reading those passages in my journals was very, very, very difficult for me to do.
So you thought that you had prayed the gay away?
I literally thought that I had successfully prayed the gay away. Absolutely.
And I do want to ask about the reading the journals. We talked a bit before the show about this, but have found that it's been very difficult for most members of the church who served a mission, including myself, to go back and read those journals. And most don't get very far at all before it does start to get really too heavy and they put him away. There was even a podcaster, he's not active anymore, but his channel was Priesthood Dispatches, and he had started a project where he was going to go through and do like a weekly, kind of a week by week podcast about his journals, week by week on the mission. It was intended to be a 2-year project, and he ended up not completing it, which I think is good, because it was very damaging to his mental health to try to do that, and to do that for 2 years sustained. I think that would just be really raw and really difficult. So I want to know, was it with this project in mind that you were able to kind of force yourself through, or was it, I don't know, maybe once you got past a certain point you were able to keep going? How were you able to do this thing that so many even current members who are still believing and maybe don't have all of the complicated feelings we do, I have found, have not read their mission journals and still struggle with that? So
that's a good question. Well, so I read my journals, as I told you, twice. I think there's something like, they're actually in a stack right there in my office. There's about 6 or 7 volumes. So I was a vociferous journaler on my mission, and I was almost daily recording. And so the first time I read them, this was when my husband and I decided we wanted to see Australia. My husband and I love to travel. And I bring my camera with me everywhere. So I've kind of found this niche making travel documentaries. And they end up being like tone poems, you know, like capturing the essence of the cities that I see, and I kind of score them with music, and very heavily influenced by music videos, but we can get to that a little bit later. But the first time I read the journals was to loosen up memories. I wanted to remember the places where I lived, and hopefully names of people that maybe I could look up in Australia. I was just doing research of places. Okay, I remembered living in this flat in this suburb. My husband and I need to make it a point to go there. So that's kind of why I started reading them the first time. The second read through, this was after we went to Australia to film a big bulk of this piece. It was to find excerpts that I could use in the film that I actually read as a voiceover. And that's when I really got into the weeds of the emotion of everything. And what struck me was how emotionally, like, it was like upheaval. It was like I would have periods in my mission where I was, um, maybe this is not the most elegant term, but I was full on Kool-Aid drinker. Like I was absolutely stark, you know, believer, proclaiming the gospel. Joseph Smith is a prophet. My testimony was, I was shouting it from the rooftops. And then there's these other passages that are so dark. And I'd forgotten how depressed I was on my mission. And that stuff was really hard. I mean, it approached suicidal ideation. I had forgotten those periods, especially at the beginning when it was still new and I hadn't found my groove yet. My God, it was difficult. I remember this passage in my journals I read where I had forgotten I was protesting God. I was so upset with the mission, I stopped praying for like a month. That's a big decision for a missionary to make. I was a very
Yeah.
obedient missionary, by the way. I obeyed all the rules to the letter, and I was a trainer and a zone leader and a district leader. And so I was a good missionary on the surface, but inside it was, I was conflicted. So how did I get through reading the journals? I don't know. That's a good question. I think enough time has passed. I got home in 2006. So enough time has passed that the sting of it has been lessened a little bit. It was emotional. It was hard, especially like recording my voiceover, rereading passages, in some cases, the most dark passages of my journals. But there was catharsis. And now that I've reread them twice, I can put them away and I don't ever have to ever again. So I feel like there has been closure. So I was seeking catharsis and I was seeking closure. And as hard as it was, I think I accomplished those things.
That's great. I think also,
Yeah.
I wonder if like the fact that you went through twice maybe helped out, because the first time it sounds like more of a skim for like names and places,
Well
and you
said.
weren't really getting into it. So I think I almost wonder if that maybe helped inoculate you a little bit to come
Well
back
said.
to it potentially. Potentially.
No, I think that's spot on.
So Jordan,
Definitely.
let's go back to where you grew up. You know,
Uh-huh.
what childhood experiences you might have had that led you to becoming the creator you are today.
Well, I'm a third generation Arizonan. My great grandparents migrated from Alabama to basically where I live now in the Valley, a suburb of Phoenix and Gilbert. They migrated from Alabama to here to join the Mormon Church. So that's on my mom's side of the family. On my dad's a convert to the church, but my mom's mom and my mom's dad both have roots in the church that are very, very deep. So it was a foregone conclusion that I would be born into the faith because my mom was an active member of the church, always had a testimony. I was born into the church, baptized at 8. And I had an interesting childhood. I had parents who shouldn't have been married, parents who were kind of rebels at heart. So there were periods where we were going through the motions and we were active, and there were periods of my childhood where we were decidedly inactive. So there was some permissiveness in my home, a blurring of boundaries in my home. So, for example, the TV that I watched, the music that I listened to was not censored by my parents. I'm not saying parents should do that, but in my case, I'm kind of glad they did because we always had cable TV. So I was exposed to HBO, Showtime, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon. So I grew up consuming everything and falling in love immediately with the moving image, with storytelling. I was playing in the backyard, using my imagination, reenacting the stories that I saw on the screen. I loved writing as a kid. I loved collage art. I loved music, and I took dance classes as a kid. And so did my sister, and my parents really encouraged that. So there was dancing in the home, there was music in the home. My dad was a self-taught musician. So creativity kind of flourished in my home. As chaotic as my upbringing was in a lot of ways, creativity was always encouraged. And
I want to ask, when you say your parents
sure.
shouldn't have married, just was this like a typical kind of Mormon thing where they marry too young, where they don't really know each other, kind of a thing? If you're comfortable going more into that, I was just curious if
Yeah, no,
that's
I'm yeah, I'm kind of an open book. Yeah, my parents met when they were both 19. I think they were roughly the same age. And so my dad was a hippie who did every drug under the sun in the 60s. My parents are both baby boomers. And my dad cut off all the long hair, became a clean cut Mormon. And my mom had that kind of influence on him. They had a son who died a year before I was born, so I never met my brother. And I think that was the beginning of the end for their marriage. So I think that's why I made the comment they probably shouldn't have been married, because it was just sort of volatile from that period on. But it provided interesting context for my childhood. I grew up always hearing the stories about my brother. I was
yeah.
always told he went straight to the celestial kingdom. He died when he was 6.
Okay, that was my next question. Okay. So we're
So,
not talking about an infant. We're talking about, yeah, a child.
a 6-year-old child who was really bright and was supposedly this perfect angel, and he was killed in a traffic accident walking from home from school. And hearing from a very young age that he went straight to heaven when he died, that became the genesis of my unusual relationship with the Mormon Church. I was always sort of fascinated by it as a kid, but mystified by it as a kid as well. So I think that's how my narrative as a Mormon person's kind of been woven into my creative journey as well, because it's kind of been there from the beginning, and it's always presented questions that I desperately wanted to answer, and so I have been trying to do that through art.
Yeah, I think tragic deaths really do have a place in, especially with unique Mormon theology, our
Mm,
idea of the plan of salvation and how it differs from the typical Christianity. It does seem to me, and this is something that's happened in my family as well, when a death is particularly unexpected or tragic, that can really kind of cement, I think, especially parents in, because I think that's very difficult to get over the loss of a child. Um,
yeah.
for me, it was an adult woman, but she was pregnant, and so it was her and the fetus were lost, and so the
Ah,
narrative was very similar, though, that she had been living up to her covenants, and then of course dying in the attempt to bring life in the world was, I think, there's a lot of extra symbolism and sacredness to that. So the funeral was just really all about her being willing to make this sacrifice. So anyway, I think
mm,
that is something that really pulls at the heartstrings, and can really just, I think, really pull people in to stay longer because of that pain and that hope of having, this child back again. So,
mhm.
but for you, I think what's really unique and interesting is that you're born into it. So it really does follow you your whole life. That's interesting.
And I'll say
Yeah.
that that my dad's family joined the church because his older brother had been taken early before his birth, before my father's birth. And missionaries came and talked about, the plan of salvation and how my
Mm,
grandmother would be able to raise that dead child in heaven the rest of the way or whatever. And that really interested her in the
naturally.
church. And that's how that side of my family joined the
Mm.
church.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
so,
Yeah.
so my father was almost in your place,
Yeah.
for a little bit there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted as you were talking about that, but
No, not
go
at
ahead.
all.
Way, how did that affect you? You said it in multiple ways growing up.
Yeah, it really did. My brother dying at a young age, I think that cemented my mom's testimony in the church. My dad, I think, always struggled. My dad has passed away now, but my mom she'll go to her grave being the staunchest believer, even though she loves a good cocktail and she can curse with the best of them. Like I said, my family has an interesting relationship with the church. We kind of found our own niche. are you guys familiar with the term a la carte Mormon?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes they
okay.
say cafeteria Mormon.
Yeah, there you go. So
Mhm.
my mom in so many ways, fundamental ways, has this staunch belief in the concept of an afterlife, in the Mormon concept of that. Whereas for me, I was never able, even in my, to be honest, my active days, never able to quite wrap my head around it. But kind of going back to your original question, growing up, having known that I had this perfect angel brother who went straight to heaven when he died, it kind of, I always kind of felt like I was in his shadow, and in a way always having to really vie for my parents' love that much more, because I had these sort of shoes to fill, if that makes any sense. This is stuff I've been trying to work out with my therapist. So I'm still on this journey of trying to understand the effect that my brother's life had on me, but it's always kind of been there. I've made short films exploring his life as well. Um, but I think you're absolutely right. Like a death in the family can absolutely cement this sort of adherence to a belief system, and it just never really goes away. So,
Yeah.
and I have to respect my mom for that, because I cannot fathom how painful it would be to lose a child. I don't have children now. I'm a proud uncle, so I can understand a sliver of what that must feel like. And so, if my mom found comfort and solace through certain aspects of Mormon theology and beliefs, then I'm glad she had that structure to help her process her grief. So that's good.
And since this is a Mormon tangential show, the same thing happened with Joseph Smith. His
Right.
vaulted elder brother, Alvin, passed away when Joseph was, I don't know, around, 20.
Yeah, late teens, early 20s.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that could have changed the direction of how the Book of Mormon was going to go, because
Wow, that's right.
supposedly one of Alvin's last words were to tell Joseph to make sure he secures the record, make sure he gets the golden plates. And, at first, maybe Joseph was just going to make up a story about how the Jews came to America, and it was going to be maybe not as religious. But then, because of all that happening, maybe that's made a turn for the project.
Mm,
Plus, he
interesting.
had his own children, several pass away either, in childbirth or early
Right.
on. So that was all pretty close together. But yeah,
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 I haven't been to seminary and institute for so long. You
I
guys are
know.
reminding me of all this history, church
that's
history
right.
that
That's
I'd
what I was
long
going to
forgotten
ask.
about.
Were you active then to go to seminary?
Yeah, so I had periods of activity growing up. There was always a sort of unspoken expectation that, yeah, I should go to seminary. So I did. I started realizing from probably the age of 12, 13 that I'm gay. So Boy Scouts, young men's, being a deacon, all of that was a struggle for me. I knew that I had to sort of live up to a certain male archetype that was normative or considered normative at the time. I grew up in the 80s and 90s when bigotry was still somewhat casual and normal. So I told you before we started recording, Gene, I was othered as being gay long before by all the kids at school, long before I ever came out. So growing up in the church was
I think
hard. I
any
grasped,
creativity at all, any artistic ability uh, in those days, I think would be enough, honestly.
yeah, it
I'm
was the
curious if you're recognized. Were you worried because you said you were growing up kind of in your brother's shoes in a way that I mean, you could never really live up to because he died so young. So there will always be this innocence, around him. But I mean,
yeah.
for you to live past that and even to get baptized and reach the age of accountability, your sins may mean that you don't get to be with your family and your brother and your mother. Was this part of also that was like, if I don't stay on this path enough, then I'm not gonna I won't be there. Like my brother's already there. He's already made it. Or was that not really maybe part of your structure of the church?
And pressure to pass on the family name and the genetics.
That's all. Yeah, this is all. That was all part of the motivating factors. More than anything, I really doubled down and became active in the church in my early 20s because I became way too terrified of the reality of being gay and what that meant for my life. And I had had a couple not great sexual experiences at too young of an age with other men. And that all served to entrench me even further and further into being in the closet, because I literally thought I was uninformed. I thought, all gay men, they can't be happy. They can't have healthy sexual lives. I was terrified of AIDS. I was just not an informed person. This is pre-internet. I had no way to find resources, to find mentors, to educate myself. So
Right.
in my early 20s especially, that's when I was like, okay, I need to fix this, or I can't live. So that was more than anything the key motivator to get me back in the Mormon church and stay active. Even as my family kind of started falling by the wayside, I made the decision, I'm going to go on a mission, because this is the only way that I can um, live in the Mormon church. This is the only way that I can have a wife and kids. This is the only way that I can be sane. That's what I thought at the time. I
And
know
how
that was
old were
misguided.
you when you went on your mission?
I was a little older than all of my companions. I think I was 23 when I went on my mission.
Yeah. So you left when most other missionaries had already been home and married
Right,
with
right.
your
And I had had a little bit
married.
of life experience. Um,
Right?
Again, my life is like ebbs and flows. After graduation from high school, I started smoking, and I started adopting a really progressive worldview. I wanted to be a journalist. I was meeting really cool, interesting, diverse people at community college. And I was on kind of one path that could have led to coming out, but it scared me too much. And so I psychologically,
Just retracted.
unfortunately, retracted, pulled
Retrenchment.
back, and chose the opposite path. I guess the freedom scared me. I don't know. It's so the
Mm.
psychology of it is so jam packed. I'm still unpacking it and still trying to make sense of all of it. But it was probably around the age of 21, 22 that I decided to go on a mission.
That
And
must have really pleased your mother.
it did. Yes, I have to say it pleased my mother. No one there was no one telling me to do it. It kind of came out of the blue. I shocked my family. Um, but my mom was very happy, and I think that was also a motivator. Got to please your mother.
Yeah. Were you the oldest after your brother, or there were other
No,
siblings in between?
yeah. So my sister is 2.5 years older than me. So she was alive when my brother was killed, but very young.
Yeah.
So I'm the baby of the family.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
my sister could always, from a very young age, could care less about the church.
Oh,
So
interesting. Oh, so this is another term that might be new to you then, is the Nephi complex, which is kind of where you have like the righteous brother when you've got, older siblings that are have left or are
too
rebellious
funny.
in some ways. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I put my brother through that. I had kind of, I'm the oldest, but I still kind of had that. It's the next kid, the oldest boy, who was, I guess, the real like problem child, but religion just never really took for him. He joined the military. He was, all of the stereotypes I had of people who leave the church, he filled that. And then our youngest brother kind of came along a little late to the game, and he's the one with the Nephi complex now, because now that I've left, he's the only one that's still in the church. He's only 28 now, and he's actually he's been in his bishopric for like a couple of years, so kind of young for that. But yeah, the Nephi complex, I think,
I had it
is part
full
of it.
full on. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for introducing to that term. I think that's
Yep.
hilarious and spot on. I absolutely had a Nephi complex, and with that came a certain haughtiness, a certain arrogance. So that was a factor in going on a mission too. I remember at the height of my strongest, most intense devotion to the church, I remember feeling a lot of male arrogance and thinking we were the masters of the universe on my mission. When I wasn't reading the news, I was, on a mission. You're in this bubble,
Yes.
and I
That's
really
been the
didn't.
hardest thing for Maven to drop, is that arrogance.
Yeah, that was easy to feel when you're with other like-minded people, but in quiet moments alone on my mission, that's kind of when the realization that I am gay. Who am I kidding? The realization that I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, all that stuff kind of came to the surface in my quiet moments alone on my mission. That's kind of when my journals got a little dark here and there. So yeah.
Did you think that was like your authenticity and truth coming through, or did you think this was the devil tempting you or making things dark
That,
for you? Yeah,
the
yeah,
latter.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I thought it was this battle of good versus evil. So it's wild to live a life in such living such stark sort of Shakespearean terms like that. But I really did think that I had this demon, so to speak, that I had to battle. These personal demons that I had to battle, and I really did believe that the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, the Mormon Church, was the pathway to doing that. And when you get home after living on a mission, and suddenly your life isn't this hermetically sealed bubble, and you're on your own, then the truth, the realizations start to bubble back to the surface, and you start to realize, wow, that didn't work. That experiment that I just tried of giving myself 2 years to the Mormon Church solely to live faithfully as a missionary, realizing that did not work, that I am actually still gay. That's when I realized, okay, I need to leave the church. This is not working.
That's the other
So it
thing
was,
that's sort of a trope, is that the Mormon Church or other religions tell you you're broken, and
mm,
that they're the fix for you. And so
yeah,
that's how they get the hooks.
I think what's so sad is because you're not broken, but because they
no,
convinced you that you are, they create this system where, again, like, you fight yourself internally so hard, and there's no way to ever win that. And it happens to a lot of in different ways, I mean, for me as a woman in the church, a lot of it had to do with my trying to feel like my worth was equal to men when it
mm,
clearly wasn't, but not wanting to be a feminist because that was a bad word. That was one of the F words, just as bad as the other
absolutely.
one. Yeah,
Yep,
and also
yep.
not wanting to think that, like, that I'm lesser, even though I was often made to feel that way. But then I would think that's my fault and it's my problem. I'm feeling this way when really, like, I'm feeling this way because I'm being treated this way. And it just, I mean, ultimately, it was one of the things for me also. I just kind of couldn't do it anymore. And it was actually in the temple. Just the more I went to the temple, the more clear it was to me.
Mm,
When the men all have this direct relationship with God, and everything a woman does is connected to a man, and it just really felt like a rejection directly from God to me after a while. And I just had to think, like, as much as I want to think that I'm equal with men, when God doesn't want to make covenants directly with me and I'm making them with a husband that I don't even have, or for these really sacred parts of the temple, like, God doesn't want to see my face. I need to be, I need to cover up my face.
veiled. Yeah.
Yeah, it just after a while, I was just like, I think maybe this hurts so much because I'm trying to be equal when I'm not. And maybe what I need to do is
Wow.
accept that I'm not, and maybe it will hurt less if I just humble myself and accept where my place really is. I was like, it's not, again, I'm trying to justify, it's not like I'm worth nothing, and I'm not saying, that, cultures where women are treated extremely badly and or abused are okay. The church isn't like that, but men are here, and we're just, and
Yeah.
maybe if I could just accept that, it won't hurt
And
so much.
you know what? It makes me also wonder, the teaching of, blacks didn't get the priesthood
Yeah,
because they were less valiant. Does that
Exactly.
mean gays were less valiant, or crippled people, or
right.
women?
Or women, yeah, what did we do? And
Maven, if you had
if
just
we,
been more valiant, you
that's
could have been born a
eternal. Yeah.
man.
It's just,
Yeah, Maven, you articulated all that so beautifully, and there's so many parallels with growing up as a gay man in the church, because you do feel like you're measuring yourself up against this sort of masculine archetype, and when you realize that you don't measure up, that fundamentally that's not who you are,
mhm,
it's impossible to find a place in the Mormon church. And I was not willing ultimately to live a passionless, sexless, loveless life, which is what Mormon authorities suggest, right? Of
right.
course, we welcome more Mormon men. You just can't have a life
Act
with
like
any
one.
intimacy.
Yeah,
Um,
just accept being alone forever.
right. So
Yeah.
everything you described, Maven, it really resonates with me as a gay man having grown up in the church as well, because I think there's many similar parallels.
Yeah.
Homophobia and misogyny kind of spring from the same source, right?
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're too effeminate. You're not being a proper man because you're
Totally.
acting, what to them, what is more womanly.
So going on a mission was
So,
overcompensating, and
yeah.
a lot of closeted men classically overcompensated in many ways. You have to appear, you have to present as hyper masculine.
Yeah.
And I had the big truck, and I voted Republican, and I was doing all of these things on the surface that presented as hyper masculine, so that I could have a fit culturally into the Mormon Church. And you can only play that part for so long. It's
That's
a
right.
veneer; it'll start to crumble.
And
I
we
wanna
could
know.
tell people,
Yeah, go ahead.
go watch his video, his
Yeah.
documentary, and we'll provide a link to it at the bottom. And we'll actually maybe move on from that part.
A quick question
David
about
has a question about, right?
Yeah, a quick question about just after the mission, and then we'll get into the creative stuff. That's where Jean wants to go. But I think typically, or I guess maybe very commonly, where I've seen stories like yours go, is that okay, I did the mission and I'm still gay. Usually, the next thing that has been advised or offered is a temple marriage. So I was wondering, was that presented to you? Was that even pushed for by any leadership? Did you even confess to any leadership that you were dealing with this? Because that is typically what they would advise and kind of
I did.
for. So I think you did. Okay. So
yeah.
How did you, I guess, save yourself from making the mistake of getting into a marriage that wasn't right for you and having kids? And because that's I think really hard to see. And when men get that far and they have kids, and then when they finally are themselves, then there's a breakup of a family, and that can be really difficult. So how did you avoid that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So after my mission, I did try to play the game. I did start going to a singles ward. When I found myself noticing the cute guys more than the girls, I realized, okay, keep suppressing, try to play this part. That got harder and harder, exponentially harder and harder. But I did try to date women. And look, as a gay man, we love the company of smart, beautiful, interesting women. So dating wasn't all bad, but inevitably when the young woman that I was with exhibited signs that she was interested in further dates, or that she wanted to take things a little bit further, I couldn't return the feelings. I couldn't even pretend. And I think the real turning point for me was this documentary that I saw, and I'm trying to find. I'm going to IMDb right now to try and find what it was called. But it was a documentary around 2009 or 10. It was on HBO, and it was about closeted gay lawmakers who were making all of these consequential decisions vis-a-vis gay rights, and the irony and the conflict that is obvious in closeted gay men suppressing and taking away the rights of the LGBTQ community in their professional lives and their lives as lawmakers. And when I saw that documentary, I realized, okay, that's me. I'm living a double life. Other people do it as well.
Was it
and
outrage?
So they're outrage.
Okay,
Maven, you're good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I never heard of it, actually, so I'm gonna have to check it out. Yeah.
Thank you so much for remembering. I was just it was going to haunt me if I was going to end this podcast not knowing that I dangled that documentary out there and I couldn't name it. Outrage.
We'll include Outrage.
Highly recommend it. It was a game changer for me. And I guess this is a nice segue into where Jean wants to go with the conversation. That's when I realized not only did I feel seen in a way that was uncomfortable, it was holding up an ugly mirror to my face. I realized I was living a double life, but I realized, wow, that's the power of storytelling. And that's the effect that a film, especially a documentary film, can have on lives. It can change hearts and minds. So that kind of became the journey for me to go to journalism school. And I had aspirations to be something. I wasn't sure, a journalist, documentarian, but I wanted to tell those stories. I had sort of an activist's sort of goal in mind. So I do credit Outrage considerably for taking me out of that stupor, that post-mission stupor of thinking, you know, play the game and marry a woman and it'll all work itself out. No, that was not going to happen. It was very obvious to me very quickly, and so I'm so
So you had
grateful
to
that that film
disappoint
came on my
your
radar.
girlfriend.
Yeah, I did.
Real quick, I just wanted to say, as someone that also like, I'm single. I've never married. I identify as asexual, actually. So for me, the like lifelong celibacy, that was the thing that I did want. You know, it's not
Okay,
a punishment for me, but I have a lot of empathy, and I can understand that just because that's something that I enjoy, is not something that I would want to put on somebody else that they wouldn't want. But in the
sure.
singles wards, there were men that, you know, I was very naive, but it did seem that I also enjoyed dating gay men, whether they were closeted and or even maybe not so closeted, but I was still just too naive to see the signs.
Sure.
Because those were like, because you guys treated us just like, I think any your whoever it was that you were dating, like real people, rather than with this kind of patriarchal mindset that the straight guys do. And you
Meat
can
market.
just sense that. Yeah, so I just felt like more of an equal and more of a peer with guys like you than I did with the guys that, you know,
And
I was
likewise.
dating.
And
Yeah,
likewise.
yeah,
It's been my strong friendships and relationships with women over the years. It's actually saved me because women have always been, you know, my staunchest allies for sure. So that's why I consider myself a feminist now, because women have always been there for me and I want to be there for women, you know? So,
yeah. And I
yeah.
think it's that equality, I think, that makes the world a better place. And I think
Yeah.
without that idea of like who's supposed to be, you know, sexually or otherwise dominant or submissive, just on a gender level, rather than, you know, just you know, what is actually naturally you and what you want out of life. I think that's the real threat that feminists have, you know, whether it's female feminists or male feminists, whether gay or straight, is just this idea of equality means that you don't get to just honest like automatically be on top just because you're a male. You're not
Right.
automatically superior. You don't automatically matter more, or you shouldn't just automatically matter more just because of the genitals that you were born with. And I think when you know, and I do think that this is kind of the climate we're seeing, and where a lot of this fear is, you know, just that, look, we allowed gay marriage, now we've got trans rights trying to, you know, corrupt our kids and change our children, you know. And then of course the feminists, the evil cat ladies, single cat, you know, childless cat ladies of the world, are apparently running and ruining the country at the same time. It's just the fear of just them not being you know, just in this superior position that I think that all of us threaten. You know, me being a woman, you being a gay man, and Gene being a straight ally. Like, how dare you, Gene, turn your back on your own kind, you know, when you're willing to be here with us. It's just, all of this is scary to them in its own like individual way, I think. So yeah,
Beautifully, beautiful.
that was my
Again,
political
beautifully
rant.
said.
Sorry. Let's
Beautifully
get back
said.
to you though, and your yeah, your advocacy and activism.
Yeah. So, getting back to this idea of deconstruction, when you're able to deconstruct all of everything you just said, when you're able to deconstruct the fact that the Mormon Church is, in my opinion, you may have viewers who disagree, but when you realize it's a patriarchal organization inherently, the way fundamentally from the building blocks of it, from its inception, when you start to deconstruct that, and as a gay person, when you realize that there's not a place for you in that type of environment for obvious reasons. Same for you, Maven. For obvious reasons, you very intelligently came to the conclusion that that was not uh, the sort of culture that was beneficial to you as a human being, conducive to happiness. When you're able to deconstruct those things, there's freedom with that. And then with that freedom, you're finally able to be authentic. I mean, everything I'm saying may seem obvious, but I can't describe to you what those initial months, weeks, months, and years after coming out felt like. It was the most wonderfully liberating experience. I didn't have to pretend anymore, and I could be authentic in the sorts of beliefs that I had. I could recognize that, okay, sexism, homophobia, misogyny, those those are all real concepts, and I was contributing to them as a closeted gay man. when you're able to make those realizations, it just equals freedom in your life. And that's why coming out of the closet is so critically important. If there's anyone watching this who is still trying to make that decision, I implore you to try and find the courage, because it saved my life. The the last dying gasp of my desire to stay as an active Mormon was very, very, very fraught. This was sort of around 2009. I came out at late 2009. And it was around conference time, ironically, when I saw that documentary Outrage and made that click, that decision. And it really had reached this crescendo where I wanted to take my life. And so coming out of the closet saved my life. And leaving the church was extremely difficult. I lost friends. I had to, renegotiate relationships with certain family members who are currently still active in the church. But it was all completely worth it. And so I am who I am today because I made those decisions. And I hope that answered your question, Maven. But
Yeah, it did.
okay.
About how many years ago did you start to say to yourself, I'm going to do a documentary about my mission?
This is a fairly recent decision. I, along with excavating my mission journals, I kept a lot of relics from my mission, a lot of objects. And as a videographer, cinematographer, sorry?
Seer stone. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no seer stone in my closet. But as a filmmaker, videographer, I wanted to film those objects because I can look at things objectively through the viewfinder of my camera. It's hard to explain. So in a way, I was able to truly objectively look at my past without entering into it with a lot of emotion and baggage, by looking through the viewfinder of my camera and safely observing these objects from my mission. It was journals, it was old mission planners, all of the proselytizing materials, preach my gospel. Yeah.
We're having an out of camera experience.
Yeah. And they're interesting objects to photograph. They were weathered, they looked storied, so they kind of looked beautiful through the camera. So I had all of that videography on one hand, and on the other hand, I like to film the cities that my husband and I visit on our trips. And so we went to Sydney, went to New South Wales, to all the places where I served my mission. So phase one of filming this project was filming the different suburbs, cities, towns where I lived. And then when we got home, filming all of the objects for my mission and trying to weave all of it together and find some sort of coherent narrative.
Yeah.
And I feel pretentious trying to label things, but I have this sort of avant-garde style that's maybe not obviously it's not conventional. I'm influenced by music videos. I'm influenced by experimental films. So I wanted to tell, but I'm also a journalism major, and so I know how to craft a narrative. So I wanted to tell a story, but that was true to my style. There's this documentary about Kurt Cobain called About a Son. That's a huge influence in terms of, for me, documentary filmmaking. Brett Morgan's Montage of Heck, another Nirvana documentary. That's kind of my aesthetic, a sort of experimental film rooted in sort of the aesthetics and energy and creativity of music videos, but at the same time telling us a coherent narrative that has an arc, that has a beginning, middle, and end. And that's what I really tried to do, and I hope I achieved that. It's a 50-minute film that sort of feels episodic. There's a series of episodes there, or little vignettes, with a narrative theme or thread kind of pulled and kind of woven throughout. And in each episode, I try to explore the various facets of my mission experience. So I'd never truly confronted my mission past until I made this film. And it was a desire to find catharsis. It was a desire to tell a good story from a filmmaking perspective. And it was a desire to create something that hopefully could help other people feel seen, feel me a little more seen. And that's kind of what the project provided for me, was catharsis and connecting with other people who have a similar story. The YouTube comments have blown my mind.
And is that
It,
all, like, it's the only place it's at right now is YouTube on your own channel?
YouTube, yeah, YouTube and Vimeo. If you just type "I was an elder" on YouTube, it will be the first hit.
I will have it linked below for
Yep.
our audience. So
Yeah, thank you. Or if you want to type my name, Jordan Currier, Currier, and then "I was an elder," it'll come up. I just tagged it when I uploaded it. I almost didn't upload it. Again, it feels so nakedly personal. I'm literally reading excerpts from my journals. But I ultimately decided to take the chance, upload it, see what happens, and it's had a decent little performance on YouTube, and I'm just blown away by the people who found it.
Like me.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. People who've commented that it resonates with their experience as former missionaries. Recently, a woman said, as a grandmother, I want to say I'm sorry. I did not know. Thank you for sharing your story. That kind of blew me away. So gay and straight people, active, inactive Mormons are finding it. And I'm getting some kind of crappy comments from a few active Mormons here and there. That's to be expected. But honestly, though, it's a small, tiny sliver of the comments. It's by far and away been very positively received. I'm so grateful for that. So that has been healing. And again, that's the beauty of making art, when you can feel less alone in the universe when you present your creation to the world. And look, I don't need this massive audience, but just making it alone was reward enough, right? From a creative standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, an emotional standpoint. But knowing that it's connecting with people is, I guess, icing on the cake. That's been really, really beautiful to see.
when you talk about catharsis, I'm wondering if you have any advice for maybe other people that are looking for something similar for their own experiences, but maybe they're not producers and maybe they don't even want to be. Is there any part of this experience that you think maybe can translate in different ways for other people wanting to maybe kind of try to revisit that part of their life?
Yeah, well, maybe it could involve um, this idea of confrontation, right? Like finding the courage to revisit your old journals and really face that part of your life. It's sort of like immersion therapy or whatever. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but it worked for me. So for some people, that may not be a good idea.
Yeah,
So I certainly wouldn't recommend that for
mental health.
everyone. And I'm not going to lie, there were triggering moments.
That's right.
Um,
Talk to your medical health professional before doing.
100%. And look, and I have to say, I did all this whilst seeing a therapist once a week. So that's probably the only reason I was able to stay somewhat sane. So I don't know if that necessarily is a good idea for everyone. In my case, I had the safety of my camera and I had this medium that I choose to express myself in, which is film. um, and I wear all hats. I'm a one-man band, as I told you,
Yeah.
Gene. I direct, I produce, I edit. It's just kind of a side hustle. My day job is I actually am a working videographer, cinematographer in the marketing and branding space. So I have a certain confidence in this medium, and so when I had the safety of my camera in hand, I realized, okay, in a way, I've got a friend. I've got a way to sanitize or not sanitize the experience, but to soften this experience of confronting my past in a way that'll save me.
That part was interesting to me, and I think maybe
Yeah.
that over anything else other people could do, 'cause I mean, even without a handheld camera, like, we have our phones, and so, maybe if it's
Yes.
again, if it's something that people have wanted to do, if maybe they want to confront their journals and it's been difficult, this might be, I guess, a little trick or a hack, as we might say, to
Yeah.
maybe I mean, it's not gonna
Photograph.
remove the feelings at all, but maybe this will be something that helps just kind of get over at least that initial
Sure.
obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah, as a creative person, I find solace through art, and so documentary film, as I mentioned, Outrage was a pivotal turning point for me. I continue to find my religion is cinema. My religion is art now, And it's through art that I'm able to find meaning and self-expression, and I feel seen through art. And so if anyone can find a way to invoke creativity in their deconstruction, I highly recommend it, whatever your medium may be. If it's music, or if it's painting, if it's poetry, if it's in my case, storytelling in a visual medium, I recommend creativity as a way to, in a healthy way, deconstruct your past. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that worked for me that might be more accessible for like the average person would be I just with music, because music can, I think, kind of fire those same parts of our brain, even if we're not the ones producing any kind of creativity,
Definitely.
in like making it. So there were times when I was feeling a lot of feelings, I would find music that kind of matched where I was feeling
Love
at.
it.
And just I danced in my living room just
Love
with
it.
all the, and if I was alone, I would sing also along with it at the top of my lungs, and it would just really kind of help me work it out. Or driving, I used to call it car therapy. That's where I could be alone and also be playing music and just,
Yeah.
without
Amen to
disturbing
everything you're
anyone else.
saying.
Yeah.
Nine Inch Nails, whilst dark, saved my life as well. I also credit Nine Inch Nails because it was the safe space where you could be honest about the dark emotions that you were
Pain.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was catharsis there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, music is obviously a huge component of filmmaking, and what can drive a piece of film. So well said, again, well said, Maven. Completely agree. The music is a great resource for sure.
That's right. And one thing that's really cool about Jordan's video is he released it on my birthday, June 8th.
Oh, okay.
But it's only
Nice.
my second favorite video released that day, because on that day,
Nice.
Maven also gave me a happy birthday wish video, which
Yeah.
was really cool. So
That's
anyhow,
lovely.
thanks, Jordan, for coming on. It's been amazing.
It's been awesome meeting both of you. You guys are both incredibly articulate people, and I can tell you both have been doing this for a long time. This is the first time anyone's expressed an interest in interviewing me about my work. So I may need media training, but thank you for making it a little bit easier.
We're glad to have you on.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
That's the
both.
whole purpose of Latter Daily Digest, is to explore new creators, especially. We have some old creators on occasionally, like John DeLynn or something like that. But,
yeah,
we try to help, the new people. So thanks a lot for coming on the show. I hope everyone has really liked our interview. I know Maven and I really have a lot. And everybody, if you could like and subscribe, and have a great rest of the year now, I'm going to say. Right. Bye-bye.
Yes, definitely.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.